For now, let's take a look at what's making the headlines here in France. And for that, we're joined on set by press reviewer Florence Villeminot.
Hi, Hala.
Flo. Let's start off with the fates of French farmers. Of course, livestock farmers, dairy farmers, they've all been striking for weeks now to protest the falling prices. And yesterday, the Prime Minister met with representatives of retailers and distributors, but nothing concrete's really happened, has it?
That's right. We've been seeing those impressive videos of livestock farmers, dairy farmers spilling a lot of milk on the streets. They're upset about these falling prices that they say are suffocating them, and they blame retailers for these falling prices. L'Opinion, the pro-business paper, however, talks about the great price hypocrisy, because according to L'Opinion, prices aren't the only problem. There's also the high costs that agricultural farmers face, and also rigid regulation. And you can see this cartoon here. The Prime Minister, Manuel Valls, he's been playing the blame game as well. He actually blames Europe. Yesterday, he says Brussels was doing too little too late. And so this is a pretty funny cartoon. You can see him here talking to distributors, retailers, farmers. And then you can see that very angry looking goat there. That is actually Brussels. And he says, okay, we have the cow, the pig, the chicken, and the goat, the scapegoat, of course. Everyone's here. And so we can get started with this meeting.
Okay. Slate version says more needs to be done in terms of innovation.
That's right. This is the French version of Slate, which says, okay, there is this debate about prices and costs and regulations, but the French food industry needs to do more about innovation as well. It really needs to think outside the box. And it actually looks at the particular example of French dairy farming. And it says that sure, the world market has really developed quickly. French farmers are facing very tough competition from abroad. Distributors and the food industry, however, need to find another way to react to this tough competition. They need to find another way that doesn't involve lowering prices, because this is very bad for French farmers. They need to think, for instance, about diversifying their products and offering different products to fit the very different demand that they're facing around the world. And this would be beneficial to them and also to French farmers.
If we look at the industry, farming itself, I mean, is there a future for the profession?
Well, and that's what's so interesting about this debate, and that's why it's such a huge story here in France, is because, don't forget, agriculture is a key driver of the French economy. That's why this farming strike is taking up so much of this press review. Now, you can see La Croix, the Catholic paper, it's being quite optimistic today, and it says actually French farming does have a future, and it's interviewed several high-profile people in the farming world. You have, for instance, the former agricultural minister Michel Barnier, the Eurodeputee from the Green Party, José Bové. He's a kind of iconic figure of French farming here in France. And they're all very optimistic about the future, even though they say, look, we really do need to reform French farming now so things don't get catastrophic in the future. But it's not just doom and gloom ahead. We do have to, however, abandon the current model, according to the people interviewed in La Croix today. Essentially the French model of mass production. And they say this is leading us straight into the wall. We have to develop organic and local farming. And another very interesting thing they say is that consumers have to accept that they're going to pay more for produce.
And it's interesting, they do with organic foodstuffs, don't they? And we certainly
and they're willing to.
And they're willing to. Well, L'Opinion is agreeing, essentially. They're saying that France has to rethink its agricultural model rather than blame everything on Brussels.
That's right. Now, it's a very complicated thing because France can't deal with the whole agricultural crisis on its own, but there are some serious dangers to Brussels bashing. You can see this is the editorial of L'Opinion, putting all the responsibility of solving the agricultural crisis on the back of the European Commission is essentially just going to drive French people into the arms of anti-Europe political parties. And this, of course, is a reference to the far-right National Front Party. And Les Echos, the business paper, agrees as well. It talks about how Europe's scapegoating is making a comeback. And this is a really sad thing for pro-Europe parties, according to Les Echos. With nearly a year to go before the 2017 presidential election, pro-Europe parties are clearly struggling to make Europe something that makes people dream, to make Europe into something that's positive. These days, anytime we talk about Europe, it's negative, whether it's, of course, the refugee crisis or this agricultural crisis. And so the Les Echos encourages Europhile parties to be more optimistic about the future as well.
Certainly we'll have to do that, especially with an upcoming referendum across the channel. But let's stay with Europe, and the left-leaning Libération is focusing now on the rise of these right-wing parties across the bloc.
That's right, because of course it's not just a problem here in France, it's a problem that a lot of other European countries are facing. You can see they're talking about the authoritarian risk, and inside Libération says that Europe is completely adrift. It seems like it's going in all sorts of, it doesn't really have a control on what's going on here. And Libération is really worried about the trend of things and the fact that the EU seems powerless in the face of this authoritarian risk that's threatening several Eastern European countries in particular. It talks about Hungary, Poland. We've been talking a lot about Poland as well. Slovakia. One by one, governments are succumbing to ultra-conservative nationalism, according to Libération. And it doesn't seem like there's anything the EU can actually do to react to this trend. And Libération interviews Martin Schulz. He is the president of the European Parliament, who's also very concerned about this trend. And he tries to understand why so many people are attracted to these ultra-conservative nationalist parties in many European countries. And he says it's because they offer simple solutions to the world. And the world seems like a very complicated and very scary place these days. And he says, you can see the quote there, if there were more solidarity among us, there wouldn't be this problem.
And then you have to ask, why is there not more solidarity? It's an interesting debate and one we will continue to have. For now, though, Flo, thanks very much. More from Florence, of course, at around 9:20 Paris time, when she joins us once again to go through the international papers. This is Live from Paris. Still to come, trouble in paradise. We head to the beach resorts of Agadir. They've been classed by France's foreign ministry as among the safest in the world, and yet tourists are staying away from Morocco. Why? Stay with us, find out.